Thank you. I will share my slides with you guys. Can you see my slides or do you see my notes?
We see your slides and not your notes.
Okay, great. Thank you. Okay, so thank you for joining today. I will be presenting my work so far. I have about 10 months or 9 months left, I think, about now. I'm sort of in the last part of my PhD where I'm trying to sort of get all the pieces together. I will be making a small disclaimer. I have had some last minute technical difficulty. So I can actually run my social networks with you. I can't show them because the entire program just crashed before coming here. So sorry, but I will definitely send the slides afterwards. I will post them and then I will put the networks up and then let's try to talk about them at least. And then in the beginning, I will start by explaining sort of my process and why I'm looking at social networks at all. Okay, so for those of you who don't know me, I'm a PhD student here. So very briefly, I'm affiliated with SDU, and I'm also affiliated with FNUG here, where I'm located right now in my office. And then I'm also affiliated with UC Syd, which is the University College South. So as Connie said, I'm focusing on social network analysis. I'll also look at organizational learning, science didactics, education. That's sort of my focus. I'm looking at collaboration, learning, knowledge. That is basically what I'm focused on. Okay, and I have a master's in education. Maybe I should mention that. So that's sort of my vantage point before joining or before starting my PhD is that I know a lot about pedagogy and education in general. So yeah, a bit about me for those of you who don't know me. Okay, so just to start off, so NAFA. I think that most of you might know NAFA. This webinar is part of NAFA, so I have like an assumption that you probably know. But the overall vision with NAFA is that science education in Denmark is strengthened with a focus on increasing children's and young people's interest, motivation, and competencies in science so that significantly more can and will translate scientific knowledge into actions that address societal challenges and dilemmas. So that's sort of the overall umbrella that I'm sort of looking into because as Connie said, I'm looking into sort of collaboration within the teacher education program in NAFA. So this is sort of also why the overall concept that I'm interested in. So what are we doing in NAFA? What is the point? And the overall aim with NAFA is to promote motivating and rewarding science teaching in primary schools through strengthened education of science teachers. I'm sorry, I used Copilot to translate that. But so basically, NAFA is an intervention into practice. So we need to understand what this type of intervention does. So I'm focused on also what was sort of the vantage point with NAFA, and that is sorry for some of it. Some of it is in Danish. I hope that you sort of follow. This is from the program application that was made in the beginning. So, but I think what's interesting is that there is a lot of framework here that we already knew before going into this. So NAFA had a lot of like ideas and ways of organizing, and I find that really interesting. And what I look into is basically the organizational part of the teacher education part. And the teacher education part of NAFA is uh, organized through PLCs, and the PLCs are local and they are also thematic. So that's interesting because then we have PLCs that are located within each of the university colleges, and we also have PLCs located across university colleges. Um, yeah, so basically what do teacher educators then do in NAFA? Well, they work with second order didactics, you can say, science didactics, of course, but also translating new knowledge and research about science into teaching science. So how do we prepare as teacher educators the future science teachers in the primary and lower secondary school? And the teacher education intervention is also about developing own teaching practices to help prepare future science teachers. Um, and what what I'm sort of distinguishing between here is the intra-organizational collaboration. These are the local PLCs, which are bounded by their everyday sort of cultures and structures, but also the trans-organizational collaboration, which are these thematic PLCs, and they are, as you can see in the figure, you can see the blue circle, and these indicate the thematic PLCs that are operated across these everyday practices. So the PLCs are very different, and also this is also challenging because you have PLCs that operate in different ways. So I find that really interesting, and that is sort of what I look into in my PhD. And also you can say that you have overlapping domains of knowledge and research. So you have something when you have what we work with as teacher educators are learning, education, knowledge, didactics, pedagogy, but also organizational learning, collaboration, leadership management. So that there are a lot of like different types of fields when you have education in general. And science education is super complex. So, what do we know about science teacher education? This is a very specific part of sort of science didactics. We know that we talk a lot about PCK, pedagogical content knowledge, as like a framework of understanding the complexity of teaching second order didactics. We also have science teacher educator knowledge domains. This is interesting because this is a reference to a study where they sort of investigated which types of knowledge domains a science teacher educator actually operate or navigate. And this is interesting because we have this complex way of organizing. So what is PCK? I'm not gonna go too much into that, but perhaps you already know that PCK, there are different models of PCK, and some of the things that we perhaps know less about within sort of science teacher education is how we enact collective PCK. So perhaps you can say that the collective PCK could be the collaborative aspect of what we know as PCK. How do we actually know what to teach, and how do we actually adopt these concepts into our teaching? Um, so we also perhaps don't know a lot about these types of complex organizations. So when we have intra-organizational collaboration and trans-organizational collaboration, so what does that mean? Do we need to understand not only first order didactics and second order didactics, but perhaps even a third order didactics? I'm not sure yet. That could be like a question for us to discuss. But a third order didactics could be the collaboration part of it. So how do we actually collaborate as science teacher educators? Because we do know about the field of teacher educator professional development that systematic collaboration will improve professional development for teacher educators. But how does that look? What does that look like? Do we actually know how to collaborate? And I think that NAFA has like a very good well, NAFA is looking into that, you can say, because NAFA is trying to actually develop this concept more and to see how do we actually collaborate strategically and to intervene in practice. So my observation is that there might be like a knowledge gap within sort of the area of collaboration in science teacher education. And this is sort of really what I want to focus on in my PhD. Yes. So what do we do then when we systematically want to measure soft or subjective aspects such as collaboration, learning, and knowledge? We talk a lot about how to use or apply data in practice. When is something research on practice or about practice, and when is something research in practice? Perhaps education is a bit of both, because you perhaps need research to really understand patterns and these larger structures in education. But perhaps you also need, and I think that most of you will agree with me on that, but we also need in practice research, and we need knowledge about how we actually do science education. How do we improve our practices? And you can say that my observation is also that education research often require both perspectives. So a result is often that we have mixed design. So we have mixed research designs. We have a mixture of quantitative and qualitative research. And that's interesting because then how do we actually, what then do we actually find? And I think before I say something more about that, I would say that research methodology in education is based on different premises. I would say that qualitative research in general zooms in on issues. I think maybe you would agree with me on that. So we have often few very central informants, and quantitative research sort of zooms out on more respondents. We want larger patterns. We want more information about data. So mixed methods research is based on different types of research designs. They can be parallel, exploratory, embedded. I'm not going to go into that, but it depends on the purpose of the design. But what my vantage point here is that that qualitative data is more like deeply contextualized and situated empirical material with a more like often a higher validity, which is interesting because you find that you have more well situated contextualized knowledge about your informants. And on the other hand, you have quantitative data, which is more systematically measured, often broad patterns, and you have perhaps even a higher reliability and replicability. So you perhaps have a larger chance of actually being able to replicate the studies. But do we find actually the deep and really situated nuances of qualitative data? My answer would be that we need both. I think that we often need both, at least if we want to measure systematically. This would be my sort of perspective. So how do we do that? I use social network analysis in my PhD, and one of the broad ways of looking into the empirical material is to do surveys. Some of you might have participated in them. And I do 3 surveys in total. So this is sort of the longitudinal aspect of the methodology that I use. Here I find sort of patterns and tendencies, and I follow data over time. I follow people over time, but also use more nuanced and more complex qualitative data in form of documents, observations, qualitative interviews. So that is sort of my overall research design. And I ask in my PhD, how is collaboration, learning, and knowledge enacted in Danish science teacher educator learning networks? And the case is NAFA, of course. And I specifically, there are 3 interventions in NAFA, and I look into the teacher education part. And I look at social network analysis as methodology and perspective for a data visualization of complex relational data. So complex relational data, I mean that we have these soft or subjective values that I mentioned briefly before. So perhaps you can often say that aspects such as collaboration, learning, and knowledge can be more like a soft sort of value, and it's perhaps even more difficult to measure. And we often talk about how we measure these types of data. So that is sort of what I'm focused on. How can we systematically actually look at these types of relational complex data? So, say social network analysis as an ontology is, well, basically, you can say that often we know that a network, basically, not social network, but a network, is a system of connected elements devices. So computers, neural networks, websites, road networks. And I think that we all know networks. I think we probably, every one of us has some sort of experience with networks or perhaps social networks. This could be an example of our network in general. But a social network is a structure consisting of people or nodes who are connected by one or more kinds of relationships, and they are called ties or edges. So this is basically a relational ontology that I sort of adopt in my PhD. I focus on the relational part of collaboration, learning, and practices within NAFA. And this is sort of the visualization of that, the very general. So it's more centralized around people, more than the massive. You can do huge network analysis of LinkedIn participation or Facebook or something like that. But these are more nuanced and more contextualized when I do social network analysis. So I distinguish between networks in general and social networks. So how do we actually use social network analysis? Well, social network analysis is fundamentally based on a premise of agency, which I find really important because agency then means that if you, as a participant in NAFA, do not feel that you're a participant in NAFA, then this is sort of the truth. So I value perception, I value agency, and this is what is the you can say the proper way of approaching social networks. And on top of that, I also do mixed method social network analysis, or MMSNA, for a brief way of describing it, which builds on mixed methods principles. So this is also why I've sort of briefly mentioned mixed methods before, because what MMSNA does is that it combines quantitative data, structural properties, graph theory, which is social network analysis, with more qualitative data, the nature of relationships, perceptions, processes. And this gives us a more nuanced understanding of how collaboration looks like. How do we understand processes, and how are perceptions about, for example, collaboration and processes, and how does that affect our everyday practice as a teacher educator? So literature says that EBEM-SNA provides a more nuanced and holistic understanding of networks. And this is also my approach or my perception in this regard. Okay, so now we are at the point where I really wanted to show you some social networks, but I cannot do that. So I will definitely try to go into depth about sort of how to then apply social network analysis. I do have some data where I can show you from the survey that I did. And I want to show you the specific analytical segments that I wanted to present today, where on one hand, you'd see the frequency visualizations from the survey data. On the other hand, you see the social network analysis. How do we actually, why is it even valuable to use social network analysis? But bear with me. I will try to explain it as good as I'm able. But I think that maybe we can leave some room for discussion, and then we can talk more about the social network analysis more. And then, of course, I will put the visualizations into my slides when I set them. So one of the frequency visualizations that Marcus did, Marcus is also here. Marcus has been helping with working the visualization from the survey, so credit to him. And one of the dimensions that I look into in the survey is how the teacher educators actually perceive the PLCs. And why is this important? This is important because we know from the beginning of NAFA that a PLC has certain properties that we usually attribute to a PLC. So these are dimensions, and I'm sorry they're in Danish because the survey was in Danish, but I will go briefly into them. But these are dimensions that we already knew that this is basically what a PLC does or is, and it's how it's enacted, how it's operated. For example, the top line, you can see that it says, I experienced that we have mutual vision and shared values. So that is the top line of this question. And you can see this is from the spring of 2024. So this is a while back that we asked the teacher educators about these questions. And you can see that the green color indicates that most of these are people, not percentage, but people, number of people. And 24, so most of the people actually say that they feel that to a very large degree or to some degree that they feel that there are actually shared vision and values. And let me I will jump a bit back and forth, but if you look into the results from the 2025 survey, you can see the bottom line here says that the same question. So I experienced that we have shared vision and shared values. And you can see that actually, less people actually say that they feel that this is the case based on before. But you can say that still we have like the most of people say that they do feel that they have the shared vision and values. And I made this, oh, sorry, it's very like blurry, but this is sort of the comparison between the two. And what I really wanted to show you with social network analysis is that what we can see here is if we use social network analysis, then we can actually track the movements. So we can see individual people, the teacher educators will perhaps change their perception over time. That is natural, you can say. People change their beliefs and perceptions generally. But it's interesting to see how people move, and social network analysis can actually help us do that. When we look at visualizations like this, where we see frequencies and we see numbers, it's perhaps more difficult to understand sort of the implications, or what does it mean that people have a lower perception of like a shared common or shared vision and interest or value, sorry. But what I will show you when I send you the slides is that there are movements. You can see that factors such as age and gender and which type of subjects you teach as a teacher educator might have a role to play when it comes to how you actually move in your perceptions. It's difficult to say whether it is in fact always because of these attributes, but social network analysis will help us show that there are tendencies and patterns, and also show us the visualizations of the movements. I'm sorry, I really hope it makes sense to you guys, but if it doesn't make sense, then I can tell you more when we discuss after this.
It makes good sense, Tina.
Okay, that's good.
I'm a supervisor, so if I didn't think so, it would be strange, right? But I think you're doing a good job explaining.
Okay, thank
Yeah.
you. Sorry. Yeah, I'm like paddling because I know that I really wanted these visualizations, but well, yeah, that's how it is. Okay, so but I'll jump back a bit, and then I will also in the future. So perhaps even in the 2024 survey, I asked, this is line 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. It says, I experienced that the collaboration in my local PLC is meaningful. And this is one of the things that I will also measure over time, because I find that the meaning is very important. I hear that in NAFA a lot. It must make sense when we collaborate. It must make sense when we use resources to coordinate, to develop our practices. So this is one of the dimensions I really want to look into more, and I really want to, in my thesis, go into more and focus on how the movements are. So do we find that the PLC collaborations are meaningful? Probably. I think that most people will find that this is the case. This is also the tendencies in the qualitative data, definitely. But it's interesting to see perhaps how the movements happen over time, and perhaps if there are different conditions that influence how people move their perceptions. Also, another important question is the second to last line, where we ask whether the teacher educator experience that they have time and resources enough in the local PLCs. And this is interesting because there's a lot of large resource question in NAFA. So what happens after NAFA? How do we actually continue the journey of developing practices? So I also find that this question will be interesting. Do we see that the perception of time and resources will change? And I think that this is not because of NAFA, because NAFA has resources to help boost sort of the development. But it will be interesting to see whether the perception of whether there is enough time and resources will change because of other types of conditions, such as structural conditions or political reasons. There can be a lot of reasons for that. So let me just think about what I want to, yeah. And so these are basically really important dimensions to look into, to keep measuring. And one of my sort of pet peeves with this in my thesis is that we really need to like have systematic measurements, although we have, although we look at collaboration and knowledge and learning, because it is It helps us understand how we organize, why we organize, how we develop our practices over time. Yeah, yeah, and these are placeholders for the visualizations. And I think that one of the last things that I really want to show you is we have done 2 surveys so far, and we are doing a 3rd round. And in the 2nd round, we added this question where we look into knowledge domains. It looks kind of complex and it's difficult to see because there are long questions, but we actually used I will insert the reference for you. Sorry, it's not there, but we used a reference from MORG, the study where I mentioned before, where they look into science teacher educators' knowledge domains. And this is interesting because they sort of categorize different types of knowledge domains. And you can see the last part of the question. It says equal and then a knowledge domain. And this really helps us to see that science teacher educators are highly, of course, you can say, oriented towards science in schools, because of course that is sort of the material object of what they do. And one of the things that I really want to show you in the social network is that it might also have influence on how you answer this question, whether if you perhaps teach a lot, and some teach a lot, and some have mostly research. So that's interesting because it's different practices then. Then we have a group of science teacher educators teaching a lot, and then we have a group who are researching a lot, and then perhaps these science teacher educators who does both or do both. So this is another interesting part, and this is one of the analysis that I will look into and measure the movements in these types of questions. And placeholder for the visualization here. So I gave you like a brief, or not a brief, but a rundown of what social network analysis is for me, how I actually apply it in my research, how I understand social network analysis, why is it even important? And one of the important things is that there are weaknesses. For example, missing data. So this is important because if we have low participation, then it's difficult to actually measure. So it actually demands a lot from the participants doing or participating in the survey. And this is also something to be aware of because it's important. We have sort of statistical calculations to remedy this, but it's difficult to really do statistical calculations in this small sort of segment. And you can say that perceptions versus reality. So critics might say that, well, how can you actually say that this is reality when it's perception, and where we value agency more than reality or truth? Who gets to be the judge? And I would say that agency is important here, and this is sort of the thing that we must hold on to. And you can say that also perhaps we can discuss reliability, replicability is a highly contextualized study in NAFA. So we have like a lot of like traditions. We have a lot of like a structural framework around NAFA. So, but I do think that we can learn a lot from these studies that we do in NAFA. I don't think that we can say that it is only applicable to Nordic studies. I think that we can broaden sort of the scope of that. Yes. So one of the things that I will be focusing on for the remainder of my PhD is to look at layers of knowledge, you can say. So different types of perspectives about collaboration, learning, and knowledge in PLCs. And I just put a small image for you in the top corner. And this is because I'm really inspired by Bronfenbrenner's sort of way of looking into data. And one of the ways to look at social networks and understand social networks can be to look at the macro perspective, so the outer structure of NAFA, the NAFA network, and then sort of look at the meso level, the middle level, which I would interpret. I will show you the remainder of the. Yes. So I would interpret the meso level as like the trans-organizational PLCs, the thematic PLCs. And these are important because they are really trying to do something new. We are looking into the cross-organizational learning and collaboration. So this perspective will be interesting to look at. So what are the implications of the cross-organizational learning or collaboration in the thematic PLCs? And the micro perspective would be the PLCs within each of the university colleges. So the local PLCs. These are interesting as well because here we really focus on people that are, it could be any person you can say in NAFA, but it's really interesting to see how sort of the movements of individual science teacher educators actually develop over time. So the micro level will focus on the one person in the middle, and then sort of the way that they interact with their colleagues and how they perceive processes in their PLCs. So each of these three perspectives will form a nuanced understanding of how we can measure and follow collaboration, learning, and knowledge over time. And that is sort of the point in my PhD. So we'll see how it goes. But that was sort of the presentation. And I think that we can talk about what you want to talk about. I think because there are a lot of approaches to discussing more about this. But I was thinking that maybe we could talk about how would you apply social network analysis in your practice, research, teaching, etc. Could you see like a way of using it as like a strategic tool? Perhaps it's easier when you actually see my visualizations and the different sides, but I will work on that. And another element could be, how do you actually think that social network analysis can be helpful when researching about educational practices or in educational practices? So that would be sort of my approach to this, but feel free to ask.
Okay, so while people prepare a question and or response to Tina's work, thank you, Tina, for your presentation. And I would like to ask you, since you've been working with this for some time now, and you keep holding on and saying that there is something that we can use social network analysis for in relation to learning something about knowledge, learning, and collaboration. So, what has been the an insight that that you have found has really been significant for you, either on the basis of the empirical data or on the theory or the state of the art in the field? What are the kinds of really valuable insights you think that social network analysis actually provides in relation to how to go about something like teacher professional development, teacher educator professional development?
Yeah. Yeah, thanks for the question. I think that one of the important insights uh, is that what I said before about sort of how do we actually measure these very like soft educational values. Education has such like a long tradition in Denmark and also other countries, but it's very deeply rooted within politics and culture and Bildung or Dannelse. And I think that one of the key insights, like overall, is that social network analysis can help us visualize both complexities, also what works. So who is important for us when we do when we're science teacher educators. are there people or materials that are more important because of some type of structural condition? And this is sort of what social network analysis can help us show and visualize more nuanced than perhaps other types of data or empirical material can show. And also, I think one of the other insights could be that the science teacher education in Denmark, it's pretty complex. And I think we talk a lot about how do we improve, but also because it's a very interesting, well, spændingsfelt.
Tension, maybe?
Yeah,
Tension?
yeah, tension. Yeah, exactly. Right now, because we have a lot of like, so we have like complexity in the world that is horrible. We see war. We have climate change. So science teacher educators are, I feel really in the center of that. And I think that one of the realizations for me has been sort of how difficult it is to navigate. How do we actually translate knowledge into practice? And this is what my research perhaps will help show, that these are really complex processes. And we can't really map everything, but we can find perspectives or tendencies or point to things that are important when we develop our practices.
Great. Thank you, Tina. And I can see that Wassim has put a question in the chat. Wassim says, because the mic settings aren't working for him, but he would like to ask, what are the boundaries of the networks under your analysis? And then a second question, in relation to the visualizations as your analysis outcomes, how can I, as presentation viewer, understand these boundaries?
Yeah,
So, so something about boundaries.
really important question. So boundaries is central to social network analysis. So how do we actually navigate where the boundaries are located? In NAFA, we know the boundaries because NAFA has sort of drawn a line around NAFA and said this is the organization. This is who we count as NAFA participants. There are different types of groups. So these are the boundaries naturally in NAFA. When you approach other types of research or studies or practices, it's very important that you start by defining these boundaries. So you need to really be strategic about saying, what is the purpose of my study? So if you want to study how, for example, how do we which teachers are important for seventh grade students when it comes to learning physics, for example. You really need to be mindful of, is it within the school? Is it do we count administrative staff? Do we count other people outside of the school? So we really need to be mindful of how we define like a network. But basically, the agency part means that as long as people say that they're a part of the network or perceive that they're a part of the network, then they're a part of the network. So it requires some time to really map sort of the people and the actors within the network. So that was the boundaries part. And the other question was,
Well, it was actually also about boundaries, but it's about, it says in relation to the visualizations,
hmm,
your analysis outcomes, how can I, as presentation viewer, understand these boundaries?
I'm not sure. Have I answered the question? Not sure actually already.
I I th I don't know either. I think primarily the first question you definitely did answer. I don't, it's not totally clear to
I I test my mic. It works.
Yes, it works. Yeah.
Okay. Thanks really for the first questions. Yes, I think the second question it's only because this visualization for me was not clear, but when you answer the first questions, now I can see the visualization again, then I can get it. So
Yeah, but
as viewer, I think that you show many visualizations, but it was not clear for me what are the boundaries of the analyze? Therefore, I ask the second questions
Yeah.
for the presentations.
Yeah.
But
And
you said in your answer, if I understand correctly, that for you the boundary was well defined,
yeah,
NAFA, and that
yes.
it's easy task, so you have a good start point.
Yeah,
as a
exactly.
discussion.
And this would be like a task to begin with, like how do we actually define the boundaries? And also the boundaries become perhaps clear when you begin the study. So when you sort of really dive into which type of questions do you want to ask, then perhaps also the boundaries will appear more clearly. It can do, I think it would be helpful. I would definitely, one of the things that I will write behind my ear is that it's a good idea to do like post tests or post surveys perhaps before the organizational intervention starts, because it's a good idea to have like something to compare with, also to track the developments. I think that this is one of the things that we might learn in NAFA, that it's a good idea to have both pre and post tests or measurements.
Measurements, yes.
Yeah.
But in your answer for the first question, you said that belonging to this network, maybe you can say something about this belonging. I don't understand your answer. What do you mean exactly? If somebody feel that he doesn't belong to this network, then it's psychological problem or it's
No.
social problem, or it's how you will understand it.
Yeah, it's a good question. No. I meant that though. So if I ask someone in NAFA, one of the participants in my study, if I ask, how do you perceive that you're a part of the NAFA network, and they say I'm not, then I would have to say, all right, that is sort of the truth, you can say. So it's more about actually listening to the people that are part of the network. And this is important because we often, when we do like surveys or more like quantitative data, we often sort of include people more loosely, and we often, I think, don't define sort of why are these people actually present in our survey or study. So it's more about actually really identifying who are important actors in this.
Go, Thomas.
Yeah. Thank you for the presentation, Tina. I wondered that you talked about the social network consisting of nodes and ties, and now I think it's interesting to say to identify these nodes. Who are they actually? Because you also said that they are not a homogenic group. They are the science teacher educators are very different. Actually, have different backgrounds and so on. And the ties is also the relations between the nodes. It's also interesting what actually happens in the ties. I mean, what kind of activities, what kind of knowledge flows is going on at the ties. So my question to you is do you have is there some kind of nodes or actually relations between nodes between people that you are becoming more interesting in than others? I mean, that you see more significant than others in the NAFA network.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you for
Okay.
asking
Maybe you
that.
can.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good question, and I think that I really wanted to, but I stopped sharing. But the visualization about the different types of analysis, so the micro, meso, macro analysis, these are important because, for example, in NAFA we have PLC coordinators, and these are important because they have like really central roles in the network. So within the sort of local PLCs, there are these organizers who will help sort of operate or organize the PLCs. So they are important people. So what is interesting is when we move from the micro level to the meso level, where we look at the cross-organizational network. So how do these type of really important roles move? Do they move? Do they have sort of the same significance or not? And this is one of the things that I'm not totally clear on yet because it requires a bit more data, but this is sort of definitely an approach or a segment in my thesis. Did I answer your question? So the nodes are the teacher educators in NAFA. I also slightly expand into NAFA in general to really understand the how NAFA operates, where is the teacher education part of the intervention located in terms of all of the NAFA network. And the ties or the connections between the people in the network is different. So it depends on what is the purpose. So are there local PLCs? Is it the local PLC setting that we're talking about, or is it the cross-organizational setting that we're talking about? So the nature of the relationships are really important here.
Good, great. Thank you, Tina. And do we have any comments or questions from the rest of the audience? Guess not. So then I think we will say thank you, Tina, for your presentation, and you will send, as you mentioned to us, to the participants here, both the slides, or we will put them actually on our website, including the visualizations, and then people can access them there. And I forgot to say at the beginning that we are recording this, but you have all stayed here and have seen that we were recording, so I'm guessing that that was a consent. We will also put the video of this presentation on both the FNUG website and also accessible from NAFA. So thank you for this, Tina. And yeah, let's give her a hand.
Thank you. Thank you for listening.
Thank you for sharing your work with us. All right, see you next time.
Bye.
Bye.